Alright guys, before we get into the podcast, let's get through the rigmarole first. Remember guys, this podcast posts each and every single Sunday, so if you like this kind of content, if you like Dolphins content, and you like Dolphins news, go subscribe to the channel and check out some of the other podcast videos we do. Remember, each and every single Sunday we do this show. Today we're only going to be doing news again. Next week, I promise 110% the fan Q&A will be brought back. I literally forgot to post the video over the weekend. That is my fault. So, the first thing we're going to talk about today, which, to be honest with you guys, I don't know how many quarterbacks we've watched so far, but I mean, obviously, over the course of a few years, you watch these guys, whether it's, college game day or whatever. Luke Falk is one of my favorite players in the draft, just in general. He's really fun to watch. So let's get into some of my initial thoughts on this. And then we'll go into some of his stats. So my thoughts and why I like Luke Falk a lot, and one of the things that I think the Dolphins have failed to do over the past few years, just over their franchise's history, when you draft a quarterback, especially in the later rounds, I really like some of the traits that I like to look at is can they play in cold weather? And obviously we're a warm weather franchise, so I guess that's kind of overlooked when you look at our division. But if we're drafting a quarterback to play within our division, I feel like I think one of the biggest things is they have to be able to play in cold weather and tough weather conditions. And obviously Luke Falk, you talk about one of the most accurate quarterbacks in this draft. I mean, he's up there with Josh Rosen, and I think he's a better version of Josh Rosen in a lot of different ways. He might not be as gifted as him, but he's one of the most accurate quarterbacks in this draft, if not the most accurate. When you talk about a 6-foot, I can't remember his exact height, but he seems like he's 6'4". He stands very tall in the pocket, and he is a pure pocket passer. Adam Gase came out and said he wants a quarterback that's really, because you have to be a really good athlete in the NFL today, because that's such a big part of a lot of NFL offenses today, especially since the quarterbacks are so young coming out. They're not asked to do a lot at the line of scrimmage with all the RPOs and stuff like that, so it really simplifies the game. Luke Falk's old school, man. He does so much at the line of scrimmage. And not in the Peyton Manning type of way. I'm not saying that he's like changing NFL style stuff, but he is asked to look at a coverage, decipher what kind of front it is, each and every single play, because of the nature of the offense that they run. It is not an NFL offense. It is college spread out game. We're passing for it 50 times a game, all that other stuff. But he is asked to do so much with his arm because of that. They literally pass it 50 plus times a game. There is no pressure taken off of him at any point in time. Not only that, but he succeeded in that kind of an offense against high-level competition. We talk about Stanford, USC, and some of the really well-regarded programs in college football. He succeeded with that kind of a that kind of offensive philosophy, and that when you look at Luke Falk's numbers, and some of the negatives, like some of the picks that he throws, is because they pass for it like 80 times a game. That's not even an exaggeration. They're passing for it like 50 plus times a game, and that's one of the most impressive things about him. And to go back to my earlier point, he's doing this in cold weather conditions, like up in Stanford. It was pouring. I think it was snow. It was snow, or not snow. It was rain. And it was terrible conditions. He's throwing on a rope, for God's sakes. Back shoulder fades 20 yards down the field, and he's played into other terrible weather conditions, obviously, and makes it look pretty easy. So I think he fits within the division because we play a Buffalo, because we play New England, because we play the New York Jets, and that's something that our franchise has struggled to do, is beat those division rivals when it is November and December. So getting a quarterback that I think he plays well in those kind of conditions, I think is important. He's a big quarterback. I think he's got a pretty dang good arm as well, so that helps him in those conditions. But he's also super accurate. He's asked to do so much in that offense. I mean, when you ask a quarterback to say, listen, man, you're going to pass for it 55 times a game, almost. And those are in wins. Usually when you see that, when a quarterback has to pass it they're usually playing from behind the entire game. And they're trying to come back. Not Luke Falk, man. I mean, that's their offense. And it was pretty disgusting to watch, because there was times, I think it was against Stanford, there was a 4th and inches. There was a 4th and inches, and they're passing the ball. That's how insane this offense that they ran down there is. So Luke Falk was asked to do a lot with his arm, asked to do a lot with his eyes and his head. Because of that, they were passing for it so many times a game. And for him not to have ridiculous interception numbers is pretty impressive. And especially since I don't care who you are, if you're Tom Brady. Now, I guess Tom Brady's probably the only exception to the rule, is if you're passive for it 50 plus times on a consistent basis in a season, you would think your interception numbers are going to be a little bit skewed anyway. But if a quarterback is taking care of the ball at a decent pace, that's pretty impressive. And that's why I think he's very similar to Josh Rosen in that sense. They both really didn't have great running games. Josh Rosen, there's a lot of times, I think the perfect example of that is one of his worst losses of his college career I'm talking about Josh Rosen, was against Memphis, and they passed for it like 50 plus times a game. Obviously, he threw a lot of picks in that game because obviously you're putting the ball in harm's way a lot in that situation. So those two were asked to do a lot with their arm. They're both really just prototypical pocket passers. I really don't think Luke Falk's the greatest athlete in the world. When people compare him to Derek Carr, I'm like, I don't really see it, because I think he's a more polished passer than Derek Carr was coming out of college. I think he's a less of an athlete than Derek Carr was coming out of college. But he is a old school type of a quarterback. He stands tall in the pocket. One of the underrated aspects of his game is he's really hard to bring down. You see a lot of people I can't remember the Stanford defensive tackle. Obviously, I can't remember his name right now. High value pick. He's one of the hardest hitters in college football and in this draft. Like, he hits hard, and he got a shot on Luke Falk in that game, but he was hanging on him. This is a defensive tackle, by the way, and he just sheds the sack and obviously extends the play. So he's very good at passing within the pocket, not having a lot of space to make throws, and just making plays, man. He's very hard to bring down, which is another underrated fact of his game. But I'm super impressed with the volume of passes this man has to throw each and every single game within this offense. I mean, they're literally, they've been up 3 points with like 2 minutes left to go or 3 minutes left to go. The Stanford game's a perfect example of that. And they're passing the football. So it is impressive the amount of just everything they ask of him to do. And this is against high-level competition. This isn't like Josh Allen at Wyoming. This is legitimate, obviously, programs that have produced a lot of NFL talent over the years. These are top 20 ranked teams in college football. So it's pretty impressive what he's been able to do with that amount of pressure on him each and every single game. And another thing that I like about that, since he's not the greatest athlete in the world, you see how defenses play him. Like, if you watch the Utah game this past year, I think really Utah, and obviously one of the games that he struggled, probably his worst game of his career, was against Washington. If you watch those games, he's asked to do a lot he has to look at the front, because they're not respecting it. They're not spying him. They're not respecting his running game. And that's an underrated trait of a college football prospect, is can they read the front? And I think Luke Falk could do a pretty good job of that early on in his career, is just reading a defensive front. I mean, he has to do that a lot because he's a pocket passer, and that's something you rarely see in college football nowadays. Like, you usually see the Marcus Mariotas of the world come out, like, just really good athletes, like Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, just athletes that are, that can take over a game with their legs. Luke Falk can't do that, so he has to read defensive fronts, and because of that, you see him go against a lot of three-man fronts, but they're trying to disguise it, is what I'm trying to say. He's really good at deciphering some of those things because of his deficiencies as an athlete, and that's not something you see a lot in college football with some of the athletes that come out nowadays. So he's a really old-school type of a prospect, and I like him a lot, man. I think he's... if you ranked who the Dolphins could get at the quarterback position, if you were to rank them, I think he's just right behind, if not better, to be honest with you, than Josh Allen is right now. I honestly think he's probably the best quarterback the Dolphins could take with their pick. I really hope Buffalo doesn't get him, or New York doesn't get him in like the second round, because I think he's going to be a pretty dang good player. Some of the negatives, like the things that I alluded to earlier, that he's asked to do a lot in terms of reading fronts to decipher whatever, if it's a nickel blitz or what kind of coverage it is. you see a lot of times he tries to make plays when there's nothing there. Like Washington's a great example of that. The entire game, since there is no respect for a running game coming out of Washington State, they literally rush three almost the entire game, and that is something that you've seen a lot with. Defenses when they're going up against Luke Falk is they rush three and drop 8 most of the time. So it's. I think that's not. I don't think that's something we have to worry about. And you see him force a lot of throws, and because of that, he throws a lot of picks. But most of his picks, man, that's just gonna happen because of the volume that they throw the ball with. But my point is that is something that you've seen with him. He does force a lot of throws, but he has to because they're passing for it 50 times a game. They're only rushing 3 the entire game because of that. It's like Madden. It really is. Like, it's crazy. Like, if you play somebody on Madden who passes the ball every single down, usually you're not going to have you're not going to play have like a 5-man, 8-man front up there if you're playing that style of an offense. So it's very impressive what he's been able to do when asked to do that much in a football game. I think it's very, very impressive. But again, like I said, the only negative I could really find about, to be honest with you, is he does force the ball a lot, especially in that Washington game. He lost them the game because he turned the ball over way too much. Sometimes he needs to know. I would like to see him throw the ball away a lot. You see him, I'm telling you, he's throwing it into like triple coverage, but he gets away with that a lot of the times. You know, anytime you watch a quarterback and you just go, like that, because some of the throws that they make, that's a good sign. And he's one of the most accurate passers in college football. So just to go over some of the positives that I love about this particular quarterback: great accuracy with the football. He plays great in bad weather conditions, which I think is a huge plus when you talk about drafting a quarterback within our division. And that's not something I hear a lot of people talk about. We have to play the Jets in Buffalo and New England in December. We need a quarterback that's able to throw in cold weather at a high level, and I think Luke Falk is capable of doing that. So he has a rare ability that I think, because it's a necessity of his game, that he has to be able to read fronts. Because of the volume that they pass with it at Washington. He was successful with a lack of a running game against top-ranked opponents in college football, which I think is another impressive thing about his game, and that's not something that you see with some of these other guys. Like Josh Allen, he struggled against bigger talent, and he wasn't passing for it 50 times a game, trust me. He was in a pro-style offense, so obviously he's not going to be doing that. Lamar Jackson, there's so many some of these other prospects not asked to do as much as Luke Falk was, and he did it at a high level. So I'm very impressed with him. Some of the other things that I see people, some other people say that he's lacking, he lacks, as opposed to some of these other guys, is his arm strength and probably his ceiling. I don't think he has the biggest ceiling in this draft in terms of where he could go down the line. I think what you're seeing is what you're going to get out of Luke Falk's career. He's just going to be a really, really good pocket passer. And I think that's okay. I think if you want an NFL quarterback that's going to last 15 to 18 years, I think that's what you have to get. If you look down the lineage of the NFL, I mean, we talk about the Peyton Mannings of the world, the Tom Brady's of the world, the Dan Marinos, the Joe Montanas, even though Joe Montana he was a really good athlete. But I think Luke Falk, I'm not saying he's going to be Dan Marino or Peyton Manning, but I think he's going to have a really good career in the NFL. And I think, again, what you're seeing is what you're going to get. There's no mystery with Luke Falk. I don't think you're going to have to, like Josh Allen, could he become the next Big Ben Roethlisberger or Cam Newton, or, a dominant force in the NFL? But there's always that he could also become a Jamarcus Russell. There's nothing like that with Luke Falk. I think you're pretty much seeing what you're going to get with him. And again, he has that. He is going to come into the league already, again, because it's a necessity of his game. And I think it's going to be, hopefully, it's muscle memory at this point, where it's a necessity for him to look at a defense and decipher what they're in. And I think coming into the NFL with that ability already installed is pretty impressive. And and again, some of the picks he's thrown, like I said, he likes to force the ball a lot. Some of his biggest losses, that's the reason they lost, is because of that. It's because they pass for it 50 times a game. He has no running game. So if you give him a running game with like a Kenyon Drake and we draft him another running back to play with, and he could fall to the second round, I think him and an Adam Gase, within our division, I like Luke Falk a lot. If we were going to draft a quarterback, he would be one of my I am very impressed with him. Very, very impressed with him. He might be my favorite prospect in the draft. So very impressed with Luke Falk. He has really rare, like I said, really rare abilities, and he's an emotional leader. Like when he scores a touchdown, he's celebrating with his teammates. He's very excited. He's like Derek Carr. Like he's crazy. He's like a Brett Favre. Run around the field and stuff like that. Like excited. He's a really good emotional leader, and that's something that obviously people think Josh Allen could become Jay Cutler because he doesn't show a lot of emotion. That has no issue with Luke Falk in that department. I'll see a lot of people in terms of pro comparisons. A lot of people compare him to Drew Brees because of his accuracy, but he's obviously a lot bigger than Drew Brees was coming out of Purdue. So, there's a lot to like about Luke Falk. And again, people question the arm strength. I think he does force the ball a lot, but I think that's because of the scheme that he plays within. I mean, when you imagine in the NFL somebody passing for 50 plus times a game, they're going to lose most of their games. I mean, that's just how it is. So I like Luke Falk a lot. So that was the prospect that let me know what you guys think about Luke Falk, because I really, really do enjoy watching him, and even though his offense is atrocious to watch. I mean, against Stanford of all teams, who obviously are known for their running game at this point, and some of the running backs that they've produced over the years, and some of the offensive linemen that they've produced over the years, passing for it on 4th and inches, and defensive linemen like Solomon Thomas, and this year they're going to have another pretty high-value defensive lineman as well. So, very impressive prospect. I hope he doesn't get drafted within our division, because I think it is pretty. I would not be surprised if he was a Bill, to be honest with you, and I think that would not be a good thing. So, let me know what you guys think about Luke Falk. So, moving on from that. All right, so moving on from me rambling around about Luke Falk, I want to get into some of his pro football focus stats. I don't know if these are his recent stats or these are his stats going into the 2017 season, but we'll look at it anyway. 2018 prospect preview. Just how good is WSU's quarterback Luke Falk? This comes from Pro Football Focus. Washington State quarterback Luke Falk enters the 2017 college football season as Pro Football Focus's day one draft prospect, and among the top quarterbacks on Pro Football Focus's draft board. Luke Falk had an overall grade of an 87.2 last season, ranking 6th best among all returning quarterbacks in college football, and 8th best among all quarterbacks last year. He was extremely accurate in 2016, ranking number 5 out of 87 qualified quarterbacks in adjusted completion percentage at 78.0%. And that is with passing the ball 55 times a game. Almost. Like in their biggest wins, like if you look at some of the biggest wins in Luke Falk's career, all of his fourth quarter comebacks, that's why he got, the name Cool Hand Luke. He's passed for 55 times. It is insane to be that accurate, passing the ball that many times. That is insane. Obviously, you're going to see there's going to be games where he's passed for like 40 or 30, but that's still a lot of pass attempts. That is insane to be that accurate, passing that many times. And an adjusted completion percentage at 78%. That to me is a crazy stat and very telling of Luke Falk and how good he is. Falk was also very good throwing the deep ball, ranking number 10 out of 69 qualified quarterbacks in passer rating on deep targets at 115.4 deep target percentage. At deep targets are those targeted at least 20 yards past line of scrimmage, which is crazy, especially passing that many times a game. However, he was just average when under pressure at his passer rating of 70.9, while under duress was number 37 out of 87 qualified quarterbacks in 2016. That's something that you see with a lot of these quarterbacks. And I think Washington, if you watch his film in that game, is a perfect example of that. He was getting constant pressure from Via Vitae, I can't remember his name, he's probably the best defensive lineman in the draft. And they were only rushing 3, and he was dominant. Like the kid, Via Vitae was getting just dominating their offensive line, and that's why you saw him force a lot of balls. But again, he's passing for it a ton. So I think that's going to affect some of his stats. Luke Falk is those are all of his stats. Again, the biggest stat for him, and I think is probably the most impressive stat out of any of these guys. He was number 5 out of 87 qualified quarterbacks in adjusted completion percentage at 78%, and he probably passes it more. I can't remember. I don't know who the other 4 are on that list, but I guarantee you he's passing more than any of those guys. So very, very impressive to me. And I think definitely the Dolphins should take a very hard look at Luke Falk. He is not a flashy guy. He's not a Lamar Jackson. He's not an electrifying athlete, but he's a very good old school quarterback, in my opinion. He's not like a terrible athlete, but I just don't think, especially on the next level, I don't see him rushing for 10, 20, 30 yards a game. Is my point. I just don't think he's the greatest athlete in the world. And that's obviously something Adam Gase is looking for. So maybe he glosses over Luke Falk because of that. I don't know. We'll find out. All right, let's see here. Next news story. Reason a coveted quarterback available. This is from the Miami Herald, by the way. Reason a coveted quarterback at number 11 would be great for Dolphins, even if they don't want him. The mock draft one shared with you on Monday seems meaningless at first blush because it's just an estimate of what might happen in a few months without the benefit of knowing what's about to happen at the start of the NFL league year in March and during free agency. But it matters for one simple and significant reason. It suggests the Dolphins are picking high enough to matter in the quarterback conversation. Understand that multiple big-name starting quarterbacks are going to change teams this offseason. With Alex Smith already dealt from the Kansas City Chiefs to the Washington Redskins, and multiple backups turned starters such as Case Keenum might sign significant contracts. Understand that the New York Jets, Buffalo Bills, Arizona Cardinals, Cleveland Browns, New York Giants, Denver Broncos, and possibly the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be searching for quarterback help this offseason, and yes, so will the Dolphins. And that's great because if multiple quarterbacks who might be worthy of first-round status are available when the Dolphins select the number 11, that will take one more value than usual. So he makes a great point. So if, as the mock draft suggested, Baker Mayfield is available when the Dolphins are scheduled to select at the number 11th overall pick, that presents the Dolphins with good options. Obviously, if the Dolphins value Mayfield, they can take him, great. They feel the need for a backup quarterback, which everyone saw in 2017 can be the difference in having a chance at the playoffs and not. But someone like Mayfield being available at the number 11 can be a boon, even if the Dolphins aren't all that interested, because someone else might be interested, and another team or teams might be willing to move up to Miami's slot to draft their quarterback. That would be a great position for the Dolphins to be in, because at that point they can sell their spot to the highest bidder, which is true, and I like that a lot, actually, especially if they're going after Baker Mayfield. I'd be glad, hey man, you want Baker Mayfield, go right ahead. I'm not the biggest fan of Baker Mayfield. Let's see here. Perhaps the Arizona Cardinals picking at number 15 value a Mayfield or Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson if those players are still sitting there at the which one of the three are definitely going to be at the number 11th overall pick. That adds value to Miami's pick, and value can be bought and sold if the Dolphins are of the mind to not pick the quarterback. Now, I'm not advocating such a move. I want the Dolphins to pick a quarterback if one is worthy, but the Dolphins are smarter than we are, so they would know better how to maximize that pick. One piece of advice: if the Dolphins are at number 11 and on the clock, and the New England or Philadelphia Eagles call to trade up into that spot, hang up the phone. Neither one of those teams have the Dolphins' best interest in mind, but those teams have a history of doing smarter things than the Dolphins. Both those teams have beaten Miami in trades in the past 2 years. The Eagles apparently on the J.J. trade, and the Patriots in the 2016 draft day trade. In the 2016 trade, the Patriots got Miami's 5th-round selection, 147th overall, in exchange for 2 6th-round picks and a 7th-round pick. Fine, except the Patriots took 5th-rounder Miami seeded them and probably dealt it to Seattle. That got a 7th-rounder in 2016 and a 4th-rounder in 2017 in that exchange. So the Patriots used the Dolphins' 2016 5th-rounder to add a 2017 4th-rounder. This while the Dolphins picked up 2 2016 6th-rounders. Yeah, not great. That 2017 4th-rounder and the Patriots eventually turned out to be Dietrich Wise Jr. He had 5 sacks for the New England Patriots as a rookie in 2017. So yeah, he just goes on and on about that, which is true. The Dolphins need to do a better job of trading, and I mean, you talk about some of the blunders we've had in terms of trading up in the draft or trading down in the draft. It's been pretty bad. Like, obviously the worst one was ever the 2013 draft when we traded up to get Deion Jordan, I think, with the Eagles, which is another bad trade we did with the Eagles to get Deion Jordan. So he's right about that. We have struggled with that, and everybody's like, well, Jeff Ireland and Didisick are no longer there, but yeah, Chris Greer was also a very big part of that front office while those two were there as well. So obviously that's something that we have to worry about as fans. I think Chris Greer's a smarter person than those two. I like what he's done in his first 2 drafts. I like it. I think they've been good to okay. So that's a good thing, and I think And one thing that I want to comment about how Armando brings up, if the Dolphins are going to take a quarterback, I think if the Dolphins, and especially these next 2 years really, if the Dolphins are going to take a quarterback, this is the year to do it. There is not going to be a deeper quarterback class next year. I can guarantee you that. There hasn't been one the past 3 or 4 or 5 years, to be honest with you. I think the deepest one was the last deepest one that was just as good as this one was the 2012 draft, and nobody really knew it was going to be that good. With obviously Nick Foles, Russell Wilson, Case Keenum, who's an undrafted free agent, Ryan Tannehill, RG3, so many other ones I'm forgetting right now, Andrew Luck. So there is going to be a deeper class than this. So if the Dolphins are want to take a shot at a quarterback, this would be the year to do it. So hopefully that if they want to take one, they do it this year, because if they don't take one at all, I think that's going to be stupid. So we'll see what they do, though. We'll see what they do. There's a lot of good prospects to choose from for sure. Next news story. Are any of the Miami Dolphins tight ends worth keeping? With 4 currently under contract, the Dolphins have the bodies to compete, but do they have any worth keeping? Let's see here. Marquise Gray. Okay, so these are all just to run through them real quick. Marquise Gray, Julius Thomas, A.J. Derby, Thomas Durante, and Anthony Fasano. Marquise Gray was lined up at several places pre-snap in 2017, but did more damage as a short yardage back blocker than he did a receiver. 1 catch for 14 yards. Is that a product of a stubborn attitude favoring his guy, Julius Thomas, or does Gray simply lack the tools to be an effective tight end in the NFL? With Gray's versatility and a salary of $925K, retaining him makes sense, but he sees the field more often in 2018. Will he see the field more often in 2018 than he did last year? Probably not. My opinion on Marquise Gray, he's a great run blocker. He's a decent receiver. Like, decent is a strong word to use when talking about Marquise Gray. He is not going to consistently... He can't take over a game. He's at best a third-string tight end. He's not going to consistently get separation. He's not a good 3rd and 6 to 8 tight end who can be a chain mover. So he doesn't check any of those boxes. So I don't think he should... I mean, we should not count on him to be that, and I don't think he is that. And that's what we're talking about, because if you look at our depth chart, like I said, Marquise Gray, Julius Thomas, A.J. Derby, Thomas Durante, Anthony Fasano, none of those guys check those boxes. Not one of them do. So that's not good. Julius Thomas was the leading name on the roster in 2017. Therefore, it seems only fitting that he lead the list of the tight ends at the Dolphins, as the Dolphins should cut. No matter how Gase tries to spin it, Thomas was a virtual non-factor as a receiver and a liability in the run game. The Dolphins front office would be crazy to pay Thomas the $6.5 million he is owed based on the production that Thomas has put up the last 3 seasons. 110%. 110%. Like I just said, he checks none of those boxes. He's not even the thing that we thought he at least could be, which is a red zone threat. He wasn't even that. So he doesn't check any of those boxes. So the next one is A.J. Derby. What Miami I ever saw in A.J. Derby is unimaginable. His signing appears to be another case of Gase love affair with the... No, actually... He's obviously criticizing... I don't think A.J. Derby is that guy, but I think he's a decent... He could be a very decent 2 tight end set kind of guy. Like, we have our number 1 tight end lined up next to him at the same time. I think that could be dangerous. I think he can evolve into a pretty good role player as a tight end, but I don't think he's a game buster, chain mover on a consistent basis. He's going to get you 100-yard games 3 or 4 times a year. I don't think he can do that. So I don't think he checks. He's not a great red zone threat either, but he is an underrated athlete. And I think he could be I think he can develop into a pretty dang good role player in the NFL. Thomas Durante, he doesn't check any of those boxes either. Anthony Fasano, frankly, I don't think Thomas really fits our scheme. I just don't think he's a good enough run blocker. And we've seen how bad a tight end can look if they can't run block. Obviously Julius Thomas was that. If he can't run block, he's going to look pretty bad in the scheme. So I don't think he really fits the scheme that much. And Anthony Fasano obviously cannot get separation anymore. He is very, very old. So yeah, none of these tight ends, except A.J. Derby, who I would keep because I think he could be a pretty good role player and a pretty good situational tight end, I think would be the only one that the Dolphins should even consider keeping. Consider. Because all those other ones, Marquise Gray, great. It's a 3rd and inches, 3rd and 1. Get the big boys out there. Let's hit some people. Great 4th quarter tight end who can go in there and block and, on a bootleg can pick up like 5 or 6 yards on a misdirection play. That's what Marquise Gray's ceiling is. So, and really, he is the best tight end on that list in terms of all-around production and the fit in the scheme, to be honest with you. Next news story. 2018 NFL free agents, top safeties available for the Miami Dolphins. This comes from the Palm Beach Post. The Dolphins believe... Okay, just as a precursor to this, I would like to give my 2 cents on this. TJ McDonald and Rashad Jones, I think, are a great duo, but I do think the Dolphins need to add a free safety for versatility purposes. So let's get into this. The Dolphins believe they're set for years at safety with Pro Bowler Rashad Jones and TJ McDonald signed at long term. And those two from a solid hard-hitting duo at the back end of their defense. Miami's interest in free agent safeties will likely to be to find a contingency in case one of its starters get injured. The team picked up Nate Allen for that role last year because obviously he was, TJ was suspended, and it didn't work out well. He struggled earlier in the season and was done for the year with an injury by week 8. As the Dolphins sift through their options, here's who they had last year, and here's who is on the market this spring. 2017. So this is our depth chart. Rashad Jones, age 29. Obviously, Pro Football. Listen, the eye test alone. Rashad Jones is not the 29th best safety in the league. TJ McDonald, 8 starts. Obviously, he's age 27. Cap hit $2.5 million. Nate Allen, 7 starts. Yeah, he's out. Michael Thomas, he's gonna stay. So here's the 2018 free agents. So Marcus Joyner, who probably is obviously is going to be the best because he can play slot corner too. He can actually play outside corner as well. So he could do 3 different things. Obviously, Matt Burke and Adam Gase and Chris Grier have made it very clear that they love versatile players. And I think LaMarcus Joyner would be a perfect Dolphin if somehow the Rams let him go. Like, he would be perfect for the scheme, and I would love to have him. His projected market value will be $10.6 million per year. So that's a lot of money, but he would be worth the signing if we could somehow fit the cap, which we probably won't be able to anyway. That would be obviously we would have to let some people go. So that's very unlikely. I'm sure he'll get, if the bidding war goes with him, I would not be surprised if he got 13-14 million a year. The next one, Eric Reed, San Francisco, the former first round pick. His projected market value will be $8.6 million per year. Eric Reed is the same as Rashad and TJ, hard-hitting guy, not really like a ball hawk, and nothing like LaMarcus Joyner, who's I think what we need. Next guy, Morgan Burnett, Green Bay Packers, 29 years old, 9.8 per year market value, very versatile player, cannot stay healthy though. Trey Boston of the Los Angeles Chargers. I don't like him. I think he played on a pretty talented defense. I think he played with a really good front seven, and I don't think he is a really good individual player. I think he's an okay role player. I just don't think that is something that the Dolphins. He's a smart player, but athletically he is very he's challenged because his days with Carolina. Then one of the bigger reasons they got rid of him is just because he got destroyed on double moves a lot. And anytime a safety's biting on those, that's not a good thing, especially if that's your free safety. But he's only 25, so that could be something, I guess, that the Dolphins could look into. Kenny Vaccaro, and his projected market value will be $8.2 million a year, which it's not worth it. Kenny Vaccaro, New Orleans Saints, another obviously former first-round pick, but again, I think he's more of a he did okay in coverage this past season. He probably had his best season, but he's another kind of hard hitter. He's not really I would say a coverage specialist, which is what the Dolphins need to get. Tavon Branch, Arizona, Pro Football Focus ranking number 6. His projected market value $5 million a year. That's the perfect situation for the Dolphins. I think Tavon Branch is a great. He could play slot corner as well. I think he's a pretty dang good coverage safety. If you guys remember the game that we played against him 2 years ago, he was matched up with Juice the entire game, and I thought he did a pretty good job considering Jarvis is a very good Pro Bowler. Reggie Nelson's too old. Bradley Bradley McDougald, I don't know how to say his name. age 27. He's a good coverage guy too, and I think he's definitely given an opportunity. I think he could be a pretty good role player. But if I was going to go down that road, I would either get Tavon Branch or LaMarcus Joyner, even though his projected market value $22 million a year. So he could be a good pickup for the Dolphins as well, just as a versatile player, which is how he was used in Seattle as a role player, like a very minimal role player. And I think when he got his chances this past season, he did a pretty good job when Earl got injured for a couple, or Cam got injured for a couple of games. So this next news story is this comes from Pro Football Focus, the 2018 free agency preview for the Miami Dolphins. Let's see here. So this is okay. So expectations from fans plummeted when quarterback Ryan Tannehill suffered a season-ending knee injury in training camp, and the team ultimately struggled to a 6-10 record in 2017. There were some positives for the team despite the rough year, most notably the emergence of running back Kenyon Drake down the stretch. Defensive tackle Ndamukong Suh had another monster season leading the defense, and safety Michael Thomas was Pro Football Focus's Special Team Player of the Year. With more stability at the quarterback position given the presumed health of Tannehill and more emphasis placed on improving the interior of the offensive line, the offense should bounce back well enough to keep the Dolphins in playoff contention throughout the 2018 season as the defense continues to improve. That is the best summary of our team in the media that I think I've read all year. So can we give a hand to Pro Football Focus, understanding and really, I guess, watching our games, because obviously they did, what the Dolphins need to improve on. Because if you guys remember, if we read Bleacher Report, they said we need to get Jimmy Graham so he can help chip block defensive ends. So I'm just putting that out there. Just putting that out there. So this is who the Dolphins must re-sign. This is also our salary cap room, $8 million, 29th in the NFL. Yeah, that's pretty bad. It's almost dead last. The Dolphins must re-sign Jarvis Juice Landry. Biggest needs, guard, linebacker, tight end, and I can 100% completely agree with that. Notable free agents, Jarvis Landry, William Hayes, Michael Thomas, Damian Williams. Again, must re-sign Jarvis Landry. Landry was one of the most productive wide receivers since entering the league. The former LSU star leads all wide receivers with 267 receptions and 2,880 receiving yards from the slot since 2014. He also has shown the ability to make defenders miss in the open field, as evidenced by his 65 forced missed tackles over the last 3 seasons. Good for second in the NFL. One knock on Landry earlier in his career was that he was not a red zone threat. However, he has generated a pass rating of 124.1 on his targets inside the 20-yard line over the last 2 seasons, the second best mark among wideouts with at least 25 red zone targets in that span. Landry has graded out at 80.9 or better in each of his first 4 seasons, finishing 2017 ranked 19th out of 116 qualifying wide receivers overall. Teammates Devontae Parker 73.1 and Kenny Stills 49.0. Disappointed, and no other wide receivers on the roster played more than 114 snaps, making the need to re-sign Landry imperative for an offense that is lacking playmakers. I would agree with him on the front that Landry is obviously our most productive and most consistent receiver, but I don't think we're lacking playmakers. I think if we get stability at the quarterback position, if Tannehill comes back and he's everything that I think he can be, then I think that's the Kenny Stills is going to be the Kenny Stills in 2016, where he was a deep threat machine, where he's a big play waiting to happen, kind of a player. And I think we're going to get the Devontae Parker. Hopefully Devontae can. I'm not counting on it happening, and I don't think the Dolphins front office should count on it happening. So if they have any plans at receiver, I wouldn't mind them pulling the trigger on that. But Devontae Parker, I still think there's a chance that he could become what we thought he could be. We'll see. We'll see, though. Dream splash signing, Andrew Norwell, guard, Carolina Panthers, which I completely agree with. I love him so much. I make fun of my brother all the time. I'm teasing him, saying we're coming for him, because I think he's an all-pro guard at his age, which is insane. And he's probably the best run-blocking guard in the NFL. Norwell finished the 2017 season as our third highest graded guard overall at 88.8, and the number 1 pass blocking guard at 90.8 9. The former undrafted free agent out of Ohio State has been consistently good in each of his first 4 years in the league, grading out at no lower than an 82.8 since 2014. The Dolphins have neglected to address the guard position despite being a glaring weakness on the roster for years now. The highest of their 3 qualifying guards in 2017 was Jermon Bushrod, who finished 62nd out of 77 qualifying guards with a rating of 40.3 overall grade. Norwell would make an immediate impact as the team's best offensive lineman in both the running game and passing game. That would be a dream, because he's gonna garner a lot of money, man, a lot of it. And dude, I'm not saying that, I know Dolphins fans would hate this scenario, but let's just say, in a perfect offensive line world, that the Dolphins somehow got Andrew, right, and then they drafted Quentin Nelson, we would have one of the best offensive lines in the league. We would most definitely have the most dominant in our division, and that would obviously help us a lot. So that would be interesting if that happened. I'm just saying, I'm not saying that's what they should do, but that would be a very interesting outcome. Top 2017 free agent prospects for the Dolphins. Justin Pugh, tackle/guard. If the dream splash of Norwell was deemed unattainable, settling for Pugh wouldn't be a bad consolation prize. The 27-year-old battled injuries in 2017, played just 436 snaps, and grading out at 52.4 overall. His 2014 and 2015 campaigns, 84.5 and 81.2 overall grades respectively, were more indicative of the type of player Pugh is. In Miami, Pugh could fill a huge void at the left guard position and would help shore up the interior offensive line from day one. His experience playing both tackle and guard positions at a high level provides extra incentive for any organization needing help up front to take a closer look at him. I like Justin Pugh, but he says that's not indicative of his career, but that could be indicative of his career going down the road. He's older, he plays in the trenches, and if he's getting hurt that much, I don't think the Dolphins should roll the dice. Trey Burton, tight end, Philadelphia Eagles. This is a really weird one. I've heard this I've seen this being thrown around a lot. I just don't get it. Head coach Adam Gase's offenses are playing at their best when they have playmakers at the tight end position. Julius Thomas had the best 2 seasons of his career when Gase was the offensive coordinator in Denver, 82.3 in 2013 and 79.8 in 2014. Tight end Zach Miller and Martellus Bennett combined for 87 receptions, 878 yards, and 8 touchdowns, and 19 forced missed tackles with Gase in his lone year with the Bears in 2015. Playing behind Zach Ertz has limited Burton's role with the Eagles over the years, but he made the most of his opportunities when given the chance. He finished the year ranked 10th out of 56 qualifying tight ends with a 74.5 receiving grade and scored 5 touchdowns on just 33 targets for the season. His ability to stretch the field from the tight end position would bring a new dimension to the Dolphins offense that they have been lacking for years. I completely agree with those issues that we've had. Trey Burton, a really good athlete, but again, like he says, we haven't seen a lot of him. So I would be very trepidatious to be like, yeah, this is the guy we're going with, but he doesn't necessarily have to be that. What's his projected market value? Let's see here. It doesn't say. I don't know what his market would look like, to be honest with you guys. Before we move on, notable free agents that we should sign: William Hayes, Jarvis Landry, Michael Thomas, Damian Williams. I would be okay with letting Dame go. Michael, I wouldn't be okay with. I think we still need him. Will Hayes, I think we could deal with, and Jarvis Landry. But I would love to keep Will Hayes because I think he's a dang good player. Very, very good player. I would like to limit his role this upcoming season if we can. I think that would help him a lot because he's an older player. So if we could reduce his snaps, I know his snaps weren't high by any means, but I think we should reduce them a little bit more in 2018 if we keep him. Miami Dolphins will make minor tweaks to the uniform in the 2018 season. This comes from the Sun Sentinel. The Miami Dolphins are making, quote, minor tweaks to their uniforms for 2018. According to a source, there's no word on the exact changes, but it's expected that the logo and color scheme will remain the same for the most part. The Dolphins will continue to wear their throwback uniforms twice a year, and they'll remain unchanged. Per NFL rules, uniform changes must remain in effect for 5 years. The last time the Dolphins changed uniform and logo was 2013. That change, which included a change of the logo, had a chilly initial reception for fans. Seemed to warm up with them over the years. The big change in the logo in 2013 made the actual dolphin appear a bit friendlier. The change also removed the football helmet from the dolphin. The minor tweaks for the 2018 season won't be nearly as jarring, but most likely means that the changes could come to the pants and jerseys, which I'm excited for. I wish we could punch Roger Goodell in the face and say, your rules suck. We should be able to change our uniforms at any point in the season and at any year. Look at the NBA. They do it all the time. Why can't we do it? Like, I don't understand. I know that there's deals with, you know, clothing providers and all that other stuff, but I don't care, okay? This is the NFL. We can do whatever the heck we want to do. And I know sponsorships and all that other trash, but it is what it is. I wish we could just go back to our throwback uniforms all the time. And I think especially our all-white ones. I've said this a million times, but the all-white uniforms are my favorite, and they will continue to be my favorite, and I love them to death. And I love the 2012 Nike uniforms to death. And if we could somehow, obviously that's never going to be brought back, but whew, I love those a lot. Alright, let's see, what's our next news story here? Alright, here we go. Stats prove it. This comes from the Palm Beach Post. Miami Dolphins' Kenyon Drake is the third most elusive running back in the NFL. Anyone who watched Kenyon Drake pull off two 42-yard runs and a 66-yarder last season could see he was a running back making the most of his first real chance in the NFL. Now, there's a better and objective way to qualify it. And what it says about Kenyon Drake makes you eager to see makes you eager to see just how good he could be for the Dolphins in 2018. Writing for NFL.com, Matt Harmon compiled a list of the NFL's 10 best backs at avoiding tackles. Drake didn't make the list because he didn't have enough carries to meet Harmon's minimum 175 attempts. If he had, at the current level of elusiveness, Drake would have ranked third, behind only Kansas City's Kareem Hunt and New Orleans running back Alvin Kamara. This list was compiled using the NFL's next-gen stats, although some of those stats could be subjective. Let's see here. I've lost my place. It measures yardage gained after defenders get within a yard of the ball carrier. This can be via broken tackles, shiftiness, or whatever the case may be. Keeping in mind the league average is 3.66 yards a carry. Hunt led the NFL at 4.63 yards a carry, followed by New England's Dion Lewis at 4.44. But Drake's average was 4.55, trumped only by Hunt and Kamara's 4.76 among regular used rushers, although Kamara's attempts also didn't meet the 175 minimum, which is crazy to think. I don't know, it's weird. This gives Adam Gase something to think about as he retools the offense that he calls, quote, garbage. I think we can all agree on that. At one point last season, not only must Gase find the right run-pass balance when Ryan Tannehill returns, but he also needs to help Drake's skills in mind when shopping for desperately needed offensive line help. Interestingly, Jay Ajayi, who was abruptly shipped to Philadelphia in an October trade that gave Drake his opportunity, ranks 7th on the elusive list at 4.0 yards. That might surprise some because Ajayi's powerful running style is the first thing that comes to mind when you watch him. But Ajayi spent considerable time last offseason working on his stop-start shiftiness and burst, which I still think it's obviously not better than Kenyon's, but I don't want to get into all that right now. Harmon also points out that the elusive stat doesn't do justice to Pittsburgh Steelers' Le'Veon Bell, who obviously is one of the best in the NFL. Bell's patient style, hovering behind the line of scrimmage while spying a hole, doesn't lend itself toward big numbers in this metric. That's why Bell's 3.71 was barely above average. Finally, there's the case of Kiko Alonso's favorite running back, LaShawn McCoy of the Buffalo Bills. McCoy's number was 3.96 a year ago, but he plummeted to a 3.29 this past season. One of the largest drop-offs measured. Alonso can be one of the quietest players you'll ever meet, but he wanted to throw shade at McCoy. There's his ammo. One thing again, context is everything. I would say Shady's carry numbers were way up than it was a year ago. I don't even think that's close. He also accounted over 85% of their offense, so he had a lot more opportunities than some of these guys on this list. So everything's in context here. So this was the top 10 most hard hardest players to bring down in terms of elusiveness. Kareem Hunt, Deion Lewis. So Kareem Hunt was 1, Deion Lewis was 2, Derrick Henry was 3, 4 was Jordan Howard, 5 was Mark Ingram, 6 was Ezekiel Elliott, 7 was Jay Ajayi, 8 was Marshawn Lynch, 9 was Todd Gurley, which is crazy, and 10, again, context, he was getting a lot of carries and a lot of touches. 10, C.J. Anderson, Denver. And again, if we're going to do context here, Todd Gurley, Jordan Howard, Derrick Henry, and Kareem, well, not even Kareem Hunt. He didn't get a lot of carries, as many carries as we thought he would get down the stretch there. I mean, you got to think, Todd Gurley's getting way more, like, you got to keep that in mind. Like, there's a lot more chances of him getting hit behind the line of scrimmage because he's their offense, for God's sakes. I hate when the stats come out like this. It's like, we'll keep it in context here, people. That's what makes Todd Gurley so great, is because he has that many carries. Man, we're running low on time here. Woo! Alright. Let's see if we can't get to some of the good stuff here. I think I want to get through this one before we get out of here, because I think it's a fun one. So let's do that. Okay. Let's see here. Alright. The ideal offseason trade scenario for every NFL team. The Arizona Cardinals get quarterback Nick Foles. The Atlanta Falcons get defensive tackle Danny Shelton. The Baltimore Ravens get wide receiver Demaryius Thomas, which would be crazy. Buffalo Bills, this is trades, by the way. Buffalo Bills wide receiver Travis Benjamin. Carolina Panthers wide receiver Dez Bryant. Chicago Bears cornerback Delvin, I can't remember how you say his last name, but it's Breaux. Very Louisiana type of a name. Cincinnati Bengals left tackle Cordy Glenn. Cleveland Browns quarterback A.J. McCarron. Oh my God, that is not a good one. Dallas Cowboys safety Earl Thomas. That would be a great one. Denver Broncos defensive end Muhammad Wilkerson, which would help them stop the run. Please, Muhammad, leave our division. He's such a terror. Detroit Lions defensive end Michael Bennett. That would be a great one. Green Bay Packers Richard Sherman. That would be a great one. Houston Texans left tackle Jason Peters. That would be a good one, I think. He's a little old, but yeah. Indianapolis Colts right tackle Zach Strief. That would be a good one. Jacksonville Jaguars quarterback Tyrod Taylor. That would be an amazing one for them. He fits that team so well. He doesn't turn the ball over. That defense is gonna be way better with him at the helm. Their stats will be better because of his ability to not turn the ball over. He would be a perfect fit for the Jaguars. Kansas City Chiefs outside linebacker Lorenzo Alexander. It's an interesting one. Los Angeles Chargers right tackle Juwan James. I will punch somebody in the face. Los Angeles Rams quarterback Aqib Talib. Miami Dolphins guard Mike Upati. Very interesting one. He's been hurt over the last few years. That would be an interesting one. Mike Pouncey and Larry Tunsil are the only two offensive linemen guaranteed to start for the Miami Dolphins next season. Otherwise, both guard spots and right tackle spots need to be addressed in some manner this offseason. The Arizona Cardinals' Mike Upati is a 4-time Pro Bowler who brings a nasty attitude and a physical style of play. The Cardinals might be willing to move on from the 30-year-old lineman due to a $9.7 million cap hit in 2018 and the fact that he's missed 15 games the last 2 seasons with a torn tricep injury. Again, red flag, guys. We cannot deal with this ever again. I'm not picking up a guard who's not going to cost a lot of cheddar, who's going to get hurt for most of the season. It's not happening. It's not happening. If I saw that on a scouting report, I would literally crumble it up and throw it in the scout's face because I'm not dealing with this another year. His possible inclusion will upgrade the 2 positions along the Dolphins' offensive line. First, a left side of Pouncey, Upati, and Tunsil has the potential to be counted among the league's best. Second, Jesse Davis can take over at right tackle, so Juwan James is a candidate to be let go. James' departure is an important part of his equation since he holds a $9.34 million cap hit. So there you go, guys. That has been your podcast for this week. It's very important that you guys let me know what you think about Luke Falk, because I don't know, maybe am I crazy? Am I crazy, guys? Is he not as good as I think he is? Tell me some of the negatives you guys have seen with his game. I would love to hear them. But I really like Luke Falk. I hope he doesn't get drafted in the AFC East because I think he can really do some damage, and I think he fits our division really well. I think he would be great in the NFC North or the AFC North, in a cold weather team. In November and December. He literally, to me, is the prototypical playoff time December quarterback. I really do believe that. Again, he was asked to do a lot with his arm. The team just really leaned on his arm. Again, 50-something pass attempts a game almost. since he wasn't a great athlete, he had to decipher defenses because that's all that he could do is pass from within the pocket. He wasn't a great threat with his legs. Ton of fourth quarter comebacks. Has a great nickname, which doesn't matter in this equation, but if I was scouting him, I would put that in the report. Great nickname. Cool Hand Luke. So I am SkyX83, and I'll see you guys in the next one.